Hi, today I'd like to talk a little bit about Error 53 and the $9 million fine that Apple got in Australia over the Error 53 fiasco. Yes, I'm using a wired microphone. I forgot to charge my AA batteries for my wireless setup. It's way too hot in New York right now to turn off my air conditioner to use the mic built into the camera, so deal with it. Now, what happened with Error 53 is something that I can't just start by talking about the Australian case. There's a bit over 200,000 new subscribers to the channel since I last talked about Error 53, so I really think I have to go through the history of it. I have to go back to how these devices function, and I have to talk about it from the beginning to give you a real understanding so that you can come up with your opinion for yourself as to what you think of what's going on here. So let's just go back to the absolute beginning of this with the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 5S is the first iPhone where the home button was not really just a home button anymore, but a fingerprint sensor. The point of the fingerprint sensor on the iPhone 5S was twofold: to allow you to log into the phone without typing a passcode, and to allow you to log into secure applications like Chase Bank or Binance without typing in some long passcode on a phone keyboard, because that can be a pain in the ass. And that was an understandably so great feature, good on Apple for implementing Touch ID in the iPhone 5S. Now, the thing with that is that if you're going to have some way of just getting into the phone without a passcode, you need to make sure that that is secure so that it cannot be screwed with by anybody who just wants to, be able to hack into the phone and get people's data and wire money out of their bank accounts using their Chase app with a hack fingerprint sensor. So you need some sort of security. The security that Apple implemented with the Secure Enclave is actually very good security. What they did is they made it so that the home button is paired to the CPU and everything inside the phone. And what happens when you change that home button with the fingerprint sensor on it is that you no longer get Touch ID. It doesn't work anymore. So if you replace the home button on an iPhone 5S yourself, you will not get Touch ID. The iPhone 6 took this one step further, and they took it one step further where it has nothing to do with security. It's just a mistake, and there's no reason for it, and it screwed over users. What happened with the iPhone 6? Same security, where if you change the home button, the fingerprint scanner no longer works. However, when you go to update the phone to a new version of iOS, what would happen is that it would brick itself with Error 53. You would do the update, it would finish, and then the phone would boot with Error 53, and it would no longer work. You couldn't revert to an old version. You couldn't get your data back from it in any way, shape, or form. You couldn't take it to Apple to have it fixed so that you could get your data. When you would go to Apple, they'd say, yeah, not much we can do. But that'll be a low, low price of $299 to get you a refurbished phone. Don't delay, buy today. And that's what would happen when you went to the Apple Store. This is where it starts to get a little shady for a couple of reasons. And first thing I want to do before I get into everything else is talk about security. Because what will show up in my comments over and over and over is, you just don't understand security. This was done for security. So it's important that I discuss why this has nothing to do with security. Now, when it comes to security, the way that this works is when you change the button, if you change it to whatever type of button you want, as long as the button is changed, Touch ID no longer works. That's all you need for security there. You don't need another measure. What Error 53 does is it only bricks the phone when you go to do a software update. So if Error 53 were done for security reasons, why is it that Error 53 would be done when you do a software update rather than being done the moment the phone boots up with the different home button? It has nothing to do with security. Some people wait up to 9 months before installing a software update. If this was a security feature, that's a terribly programmed security feature, because that means that after I install my knockoff evil Dr. Robotnik home button into the phone to steal your data, I have 9 months to do that. Doesn't make any sense. Now, the way that this works as well is that when you install a new home button into the iPhone, you can't just use the Touch ID feature on it. You need to reboot the phone. So let's say I did make some magical evil home button that could hack into the Secure Enclave. The home button is not hot swappable in the same way that an SD card is hot swappable. With an SD card, I can pop it into my computer and out of my computer without turning it off. I can pop it into or out of my camera without rebooting the camera, and it'll work. With the way that the home button with Touch ID works, once I unplug that and I plug it back in, it will not work without rebooting the phone. Now, when you reboot the phone is going to ask for a passcode, even if it has the original home button in it. So if I unplug the battery from the device and I plug the battery back into the device, I cannot even use the original home button to log into the phone. It will ask for a passcode because I have done a full power boot loop. I need to have the home button installed while the phone is still on, which I cannot do because it's not hot swappable, and I need to then reboot the phone to make it work, which will then force the phone to ask for my passcode. so I cannot get into the device, even if I did manage to come up with some hacked home button, which, by the way, in the past 4 years, nobody has come up with. So this has nothing to do with security. If Error 53 did have to do with security, it would implement itself the moment that it noticed a knockoff home button, not 9 months later when you update the phone. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, why do you assume malice rather than assuming stupidity? What if this was just a bug? What if this was just a manufacturing defect? What if it was just a software flaw? Why are you assuming malice rather than assuming stupidity? And that's a great question, and that's a criticism that I accept. I did jump to assuming malice before doing a lot of research into whether or not this was a bug of some sort. And I'd like to explain why that's the case, because that's actually a very valid criticism of a lot of my videos, that I will jump to assuming something bad of Apple rather than just assuming that they made a mistake. The reason that I jumped to that assumption is because when people went to Apple stores with this issue, what the Apple store clerks would say is that you must have brought this to a third party that fixed it, and the third party did something wrong. They messed up your phone. Further, when news of this came out in 2015, Apple's response was that this is due to security of the phones, and if you have something done on a third party, they may have messed it up. It was, as my original landlord, John Grossbard, used to say when we found bed bugs in our new space that we were paying over $3,000 a month for, it's probably something that you guys did. It was one of those things. Apple never decided to look into whether this was a bug. That wasn't their first reaction. Their first reaction was, oh, maybe we did something wrong. Okay, let's look into that. Why does Error 53 exist? Apple's first reaction was to say, okay, well, this is actually a security thing. This has to do with security, and you brought it to a third party that must have messed up the device. They didn't do any reflection for even a minute to say that maybe it's something that we did. It was because of that that I then jumped to the assumption that this was done maliciously to mess with people's devices and that Apple was full of it. And they were full of it for a long time. Now, if I had to guess, I would say that that reaction, that statement from Apple came from somebody in either PR or marketing who has even less of an idea how these devices are put together than the dude at Tilus of Tech. That was something that just made no sense. This has nothing to do with security. I believe that I had every right at that time to assume that this was being done maliciously to mess with people who were getting their devices repaired. Now, you may say, Lewis, as an independent repair shop, you should know that by changing the home button, it's going to destroy the device. And you know what? Fair enough. Maybe I should know that changing the home button should destroy the device. But let's go through this here. Every iPhone from the 2 to the 5 allowed you to change the home button with no issues. The 5S, even with Touch ID, you would change the home button and you could update the phone. No issues. You just wouldn't have Touch ID anymore. The iPhone 6 was the first phone where if you did this, you would have this issue. Nowhere in the service manual did it state that you would have Error 53. Nowhere even in Apple's own service manuals given out to Apple authorized service providers does it say that if you change the home button, you will get Error 53. How is it that I'm supposed to know of something that A, never affected previous iPhones, B, is not included in Apple's own internal documentation on how to fix the phone when it came out, and C, is not said at all in the EULA regarding the software update? Nowhere in that EULA does it ever state, this will brick your phone if you change the home button with Error 53 and you will not have access to your data. Doesn't say that anywhere. And when you take the device to the store, they stand by that mantra that you must have taken it to an independent repair shop, they messed it up. Even if the independent repair shop did a perfect job of installing the new home button, did not damage any cables, used an authentic Apple screen, even if they took the screen off of an iPhone 6 that they purchased from the Apple Store itself and put it onto another person's iPhone 6, that device, if it was perfectly serviced, would still give you Error 53 if you updated the software. This is not something that I think a reasonable person can imagine independent repair shops or even Apple-authorized repair shops had any ability to know about. And the reason I say that is because it took Apple damn near a year to figure this out for themselves. If it took the $900 billion company almost a year to figure it out for themselves, how is it that we would be able to figure this out for ourselves? But I digress. What happened is, after about a year of people talking about this and this issue getting more and more media attention and Apple getting more and more bad PR, they realized that it was actually something that was designed for production. Error 53 was put there so that when the phones would be programmed at the factory, if something went wrong with the pairing between the home button and the CPU, rather than that phone being shipped to the customer, it would get Error 53 It would be bricked at the factory before it reached the customer. So this was done as a level of quality assurance and quality control at the factory. But Error 53 was never designed or intended to make it into users' phones that were being repaired or a user device that was being sold in Best Buy or Verizon or the AT&T store. That's what Apple said. So that means that this was indeed a bug. So when Apple said, this must be third-party repair shops messing up phones, when Apple said, this is a security feature, we did this to help you, all that stuff that Apple said in the beginning of 2015 was completely and utter eviscerated, rendered invalid, completely inaccurate, and complete BS by their own statements in 2016 when they issued a bug fix for Error 53. The bug fix for Error 53 allows you to connect a phone that was bricked by Error 53 to a computer and then have that phone unbricked. You would not have Touch ID functionality anymore. That would be gone, but you would have access to your data and the phone would work as a phone again, the same way it did with the iPhone 5S. Now, fast forwarding. Well, what happens to all those people that went to an Apple store after they got Error 53 and just gave up and paid $249 or $349 or whatever the rate was to have their phone replaced? Well, it seems like all those people kind of got screwed now, doesn't it? All those people who were given a refurbished device to replace their perfectly good device that just had a software issue caused them to not have a working phone anymore. That really sucks. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand why Apple would say, we don't want to work on a device that somebody else has worked on if we can prove that they messed it up. If I open a phone and I see that there's long screw damage and there's liquid damage and a tech tried to plug in the battery backwards and the screen connector upside down so it's all jagged and messed up, I probably would not want to work on that device. If I can prove that another technician damaged it, I understand if Apple would say, we're going to charge you more money to just do an out-of-warranty replacement on this because you messed it up. No normal repair for you. I can understand that to some extent if the user messed it up. But when you're offering zero options to the end user for repair, when there's no proof that it was messed up, when it's actually your own bug that caused this, that really sucks. So that means that a lot of users paid $249 to $349 to have these devices replaced with refurbished ones when there was nothing wrong with them. Now, credit where credit is due. Apple did a much better job of implementing Touch ID, the Secure Enclave, and the fingerprint sensor from a security perspective than their Android competitors. If you look at phones like the HTC One Max or the Samsung Galaxy S5 and S6, they were far less secure than the Apple devices. So good on Apple for making a device that was more secure. That's a good thing, and we should be complimenting Apple on their security there. However, just because Apple made a device that was more secure does not mean that they get to wave the get-out-of-jail-free card of security anytime they have a bug. Error 53 was a bug. This was something that was designed for when they were being manufactured. This was not something that was supposed to make it into the retail devices. When somebody has Error 53 and they go to the store, and at the store they say, tough shit, pay us $249 to $349 to replace your totally fine phone with a refurb that they're then going to refurbish when they get it back and sell it to somebody else, that's wrong. When Apple says this was a bug, our apologies for this bug, but then doesn't refund all the people that paid $249 to $349 to get an out-of-warranty refurbished phone from them, that is wrong. They do not get to wave Error 53 around for that bug. I can simultaneously compliment Apple on their superior security to their Android counterparts when dealing with the fingerprint scanner, while simultaneously realizing that the security excuse they gave for Error 53 is complete bullshit when you look at how the Secure Enclave works. So what did Australia do at this point when they realized that Apple was billing people $249 to $349 for refurbished device swaps, and then taking those old ones, unbricking them, and then selling them to people? Well, they fined them $9 million, right? They sure showed Apple. They gave them a lesson. $9 million. It looks like Apple's total equity right now is $126 billion, around there. Total assets, $367 billion. Total liabilities, $240 billion. If I look at all this, that would be like you finding me. I'm just going to do some quick math on the fly in my head. It would be like you finding me $5 to $50. When you look at what my net worth as an individual, as a business is, when Apple is fined $9 million for what they did, that would be the equivalent of finding me somewhere between $5 to $50. So let's say for 2 years straight, I tricked hundreds of thousands of people into giving me $200 to $400 for something that I should not have been charging them that for. And then after years of charging hundreds of thousands of people $300 when I should not have been doing that, you fine me $5 to $50. Does that sound fair to you? If anybody thinks that this is a win in Australia's court, that look at Australia's consumer protection, they're not going to let large companies push people up. No. No. You don't get... This is not even remotely impressive. I understand that in this instance, that the maximum that they could be fined under that current law is $9 million. And I can respect that. At the same time, I am not going to be waving this as some sort of flag of victory, like, look at the Australian government. Australia showed Apple who's... No, they didn't. I could have made hundreds of thousands of dollars over a year, and you fined me $5? Like, really? Really? That's what you're saying? Just the amount of money that Apple made off of this alone is way more than what they were fined. What I do find impressive about it is not the dollar amount, but rather the fact that people are waking up to this and that consumers are realizing what's going on. The press is actually more important than the fine. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. That's it for today. As always, I hope you learned something, and I will be doing a board repair live stream as soon as my AA batteries get finished charging and the air conditioner makes it cool enough to work in here.